And my name's John, and I'm a codependent, and really, just a grateful member of this fellowship. It's interesting. I'm going to share a little bit just about my introduction into Coda, but it's interesting that to ask the traditions, to actually go through the traditions. I've been in Coda 12 years, I think, probably off and on. I've had this green book for 12 years. I've been through the steps a couple of times, but I'm just actually for the first time going through the traditions. And it's really interesting because I was like, I come through another fellowship, and we used to, in meetings for the years and years I've been in my other fellowship, I'd read the traditions, or the traditions would be read out. And I used to think, because when the traditions were read out, it was more like a history lesson for me, what happened, how they started, and I used to love it. But it never ever come to me that you could actually work through the traditions. And I must say, I mean, I'm in the middle of them at the moment. I must say, to actually work through them. I mean, in our green book, I've got it in front of me here, which I might use for a little bit of a sort of to look at it. To actually work through the questions in the traditions, it's kind of like been one of them wow moments sort of thing. Like, really. And I think the main thing is because the steps. I've been through the steps loads and loads of times in different sort of fellowships, but the steps is all about me. It's all about looking at me, all about this, and even step 8 and 9 is about me. It's my amends. It's all about me. And personal inventory. And it kind of like flipped it on its head working through the traditions. I mean, I knew all the old sort of like sayings that, the founder members of AA, they, because all the different fellowships were like destroying themselves. So they put the traditions in to sort of, to have some boundaries really, to stop everyone killing each other. And I thought that's okay. That's okay. But actually to go through the work, it really has changed. I mean, I was with my sponsor. I think I'm sharing Tradition 8 with him tomorrow. And I was with my sponsor a couple of weeks ago, and I literally said to him, "This is amazing. Wow." And he was like, he's been through them loads of times. And to actually, I mean, the first part of Tradition 1, it says like, we practice new behaviours and follow new guidelines in order to restructure our lives in recovery. I mean, I've been in recovery 17 years. Or I've been in a 12-step program for 17 years. And it's like, wow, it's like really looking at things in different sort of ways. Really looking at it. I mean, just before, I wrote down a couple of things at the end of when I done my Tradition 1. And well, the main things, which was really good, and I shared them. We kind of like reviewed it at the end, and what it says, it moves from the from the me to the we. And that kind of like sums up for me, coming from the steps to the traditions. It is about we. For me, it really challenged my selfishness. I was really able to look at, there's either, two types of things which really uncovered. I'm either want to be in control or I want to be compliant. But even when I'm being compliant, I'm still trying to control. So it was really looking at that, as a group. And I think the first part of Tradition 1 that that it actually says about our common welfare should come first, personal recovery with response code of unity. It creates a safe place for our recovery. Now, this taps into what code had given me that my other fellowship stopped giving me. And the reason I say that is because my whole life, my whole life, I grew up with a real dysfunctional family. My dad was a rageaholic, my mother was an alcoholic, and I'm doing a lot of work at the moment around this. And the buzzword that I always got when I was doing this work is this like cognitive dissonance, which having all these two processes going on in my head and not knowing, how. And it kind of like what happened in my other fellowship. I was in there for 5 years. But I was feeling a lot of shame because obviously I'd got my chemical addiction under control. I was still feeling like shit. I was still like, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I should have been grateful. I was clean and sober, but I had problems with the world. I had problems with relationships. Also, you know, I'm shame based. You know, you only have to say something to me and I can go into that, you know, we hear it a lot, shame spiral, you know, and I think, and in other fellowship, it's funny because a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to our co-founder and he was telling my story and that identification. And, you know, I wasn't able to look at stuff that was really going on for me, like this core stuff. So what happened was in my other fellowship, I started feeling unsafe because there was feedback, there was advice giving, you know, and I'm shame based. So I'm sharing stuff and people are feeling safe. So I come into Coda, and first thing, you know, I heard about the welcome. They told about the welcome, and it was like, wow, you know, this sort of, you might have come from families where addictions you might not, your feelings weren't validated. It's like, wow, I've been in 12-step recovery for 5 years. I've never heard any of this. And also the most important thing, which in my opinion is the most important bit of literature that I've ever heard in 12-step recovery, and I've been in, is that guidelines for sharing, no feedback. When I first come into Coda, you know, when I heard that, it's like, wow, you know, because I just want to share. And why I'm saying this is because I find this fellowship so safe, you know, where I can share. And I think by going through these traditions, it's made it even feel safer for me. And I can really go at a deeper level that I couldn't go into the other place. And that's what it is for me. It's that sort of like, because you know, I am shame based. And you know what? I think, I think coming into Coda as well, definitely, I'm easier on myself. You know, if you'd have had the childhood I had and you'd have gone through what I, you know, went through, they've got this thing in the, you know, and I'm not, you know, I had to, you know, get my chemical addiction sorted out 5 years before I could look at any of this stuff. And I'm not, you know, I am so grateful, you know, for what happened. But they've got this thing as well. It's what's your part in it? You know, there's a lot of stuff on it. I haven't got a part in it. Do you know what I mean? I was battered. You know, I haven't got a part in it. I never had a part in it. So I think, you know, coming into this sort of doing these traditions, especially in Coda, it's just created this safe place where I'm really able to, you know, go deeper. I mean, it says in here about, you know, willing to let go of my own egos and my personal agenda to order to support common welfare of Coda. I mean, it is that thing about having a big ego, you know, and that sort of flipping. I think mostly my ego, you know, is probably around work stuff because I can get, look, you don't know, I know, I'm quite experienced in my field and I've got to watch that. That's one area. But I can almost flip, like, you know, from having that ego, but also having that low self-esteem. And that's that cognitive dissonance. I don't know what process is going on for me sometimes. So for me, like anything, it's about finding a balance. It's about finding the middle ground. Where am I? Yeah, so what I wanted to do, if it was okay, is just this sort of thing about just reading through a couple of things that just jumped out at me. You know, this thing about what it is for me is about this tradition is about setting boundaries. You know, I have to keep myself well, you know, to like stay well in the sort of fellowship as well. The easiest thing, and the thing is for me, it kind of like all ties in together as well. You know, so like what it says here, how does honouring the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, you know, it keeps me honest. It keeps me honest. It keeps me humble. And also the most important thing, it reminds me where I've come from. You know, that is the most important thing. Always remember where I come from. Humility is something, I mean, if there's something I don't like, you know, it's sort of an arrogance. And you know what, when I was in my own, you know, my own madness, I could probably come across as a sort of arrogance, and it's something I really, really don't like. So I really try and keep it, you know, this sort, and also about trying to not harm anyone. You know, I think this, you know, this thing about, you know, our common welfare should come first. It's about unity, not looking at other people. And the thing is, there's this thing about, you know, where there's a great saying that says, you know, if I'm okay, you're okay. I think it's a therapeutic saying or something, and that I heard. And what he's saying is, if I'm not feeling great, I'm going to focus on everyone. And there's a lot of people in this meeting, but I'm going to find someone to focus on, you know. And I think by doing this stuff is really, because I can say it, yeah, I can, you know, oh, I don't take people's inventory. But what I do is if something's going on for me, I talk about it. But I know that if I put it this way, if I'm actually feeling okay spiritually, thank you. If I'm actually feeling okay spiritually, I don't have to focus on anyone else because I'm okay, you know. So yeah, I mean, the main thing about building this sort of step one for me, it is about you know, personal recovery depends upon. It is all about unity. It is all about if there's unity, it's about feeling safe. I think it's what I said at the beginning when I first come into Coda. It's about safe, and I've been in places, meetings where I haven't felt safe, and it just takes me straight back to childhood. It takes me straight back to that place, and I will shut down. I will shut down completely. I've got to feel safe in a place, and I think this sort of tradition is kind of like the gateway, you know, to realizing if there's Coda unity, then I'm going to feel safe. It's all about safety for me. You know, with someone who come from a real place of unsafety, who's got massive trust issues, you know, once I feel safe, I can make myself vulnerable. And I think that's it. So thank you.
My name is Barbara. I'm codependent, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really an honor and a pleasure to talk to this many people with this common welfare that we all want to maintain in this fellowship. So I'm really very grateful for the opportunity. I've heard so much. It's changed some of what I wanted to talk about even, but I think I'll start a little bit with my take on the traditions since I've been in Coda. I'm actually a late teenager in Coda, so I feel like I've done some growth, but the traditions weren't really a big part of that early growth. It's only been relatively recent, past several years, I guess, where I've really worked the traditions and thought the traditions through. And there have been some rather new, I guess, pamphlets that have come out, booklets that have increased my awareness of how powerful they are. And our common welfare should come first. Our personal recovery depends upon Coda unity. I'll repeat that more than once, I'm sure. But I'll just let you all know how the last time I did the steps in a step group a few years back, we did the steps 3 weeks of the month and a tradition one week of the month. And I realized how interwoven each step is with its partner tradition. And it gave a whole new meaning to my working the steps. And I found it so useful and so helpful because, as I heard in this meeting today, the steps are all about me and the traditions are about the rest of us. And of course, I'm here like everyone else for tradition 3. The only requirement for membership is a desire for healthy and loving relationships. That's why I'm here. That's why I keep coming back. And that's why the traditions are playing a big part in my recovery and my journey. So my childhood didn't really give me the guidance to be an adult, basically. And the concept of this tradition of connecting with other human beings, the word unity, that's for some reason been a very strong value for me during my entire life, actually. Everyone is one. Everyone is equal. We need to live together. I want to be a part of some greater thing than just me. And it's really been one of my values that I can relate to from my life. But in reading the traditions, tradition 1, particularly, something jumped out at me, and that is that everybody is individual. We do have this unity, but everyone is an individual, and therefore we all have our own ideas, our own opinions, our own values, our own methods of coping, our own journey, basically. And I know for a fact in my own case, my own life, so many of my relationships were not healthy because I had forgotten about that. Now there's something that I've heard recently about opposites being complementary, which is another very heavy concept, which I've been thinking about a lot lately. So the opposite, I can't give you the exact word that would be the correct opposite of unity, but I had forgotten about that opposite, that this person I was married to, who we were so much alike, we had so much in common, we had this common bond. However, that person doesn't think like me. That person doesn't have the same needs and desires and wants that I have. So this was really something that was a mystery to me. I had no clue on what was wrong with that type of thinking. So the concept of connecting with fellow human beings is so important to me, and I want to feel a part of a group. And guess what? I discovered CODA, and here we all are together, and we have this common welfare that is our tradition one, and we work towards it. And it's just been a start of another chapter of my journey, working the various traditions. To get a little bit current on tradition one, the pandemic has actually given me great examples of how this works, because we are all in the same boat, right? We're all in the same boat with this lockdown, the challenges, the isolation, and all of that. But yet everyone has to live and feel comfortable in their own way of how it's going to be affecting them and how they're going to live. So the resentments and the questioning and the judgment and all of that I'm experiencing with different conversations I have with my closest friends has been really trying. But studying tradition one has given me some comfort. And I have to really just say it's the higher power moment in this program that's happening to me right now in that, because I've really been struggling with that. And I've kind of had this little glimmer. Well, people have different opinions and they have different comfort zones, and I shouldn't judge them, but then I jump back and start judging or feel like I'm being judged insofar as pandemic life. But if I just keep my focus on tradition one and what it's taught me, I think I'm going to find I'll get over a lot of that resentment, fear, and a fear of abandonment. Basically, that's one of my biggest fears I've learned in this tradition and in this program. So another higher power moment surrounding tradition one for me happened just under a week ago when I attended a meeting, and it was on all of the traditions. And what we were reading from was a pamphlet on the traditions, which I used to have, and I don't even know why I don't have it anymore. But I jotted down a paragraph that is so powerful, and I think this is going to probably consume most of my time right now, but I'm going to read a sentence and then talk about it, because if you've heard this before, bear with me, but if you're hearing it for the first time or with new ears, it's really going to be helpful for me to be sharing it with all of you. So the first tradition reminds us that without the strength of the code of fellowship, we do not recover on our own. Bingo. That's why we come to meetings and continue to come to meetings. I used to think I could do this all by myself. In fact, during my recovery, I moved away from where I lived because I used to move around a lot. And I went where there was no meetings, and I just figured, okay, I'll just read the literature every day and work on do some step work. But no, that wasn't enough. And I needed the meetings. I needed to reach out to fellow members. I needed not feedback, but bouncing ideas off. You hear something, I hear something. And as somebody else shared earlier, it could be someone coming to their very first meeting, but something comes out of that person that I relate to. So, and it actually might even be, that's what I'm feeling right now. And I never even realized that before. That's the code of unity. All right, next sentence from this pamphlet. CODA's existence depends upon code of unity. I think that's pretty straightforward. We need the continuity of our common bonds, such as literature, meeting format, the steps and traditions, recovery tools, and concepts. Yes, we do need that. I know I need that. And what is so comforting to me when I go to a meeting is hearing the preamble and the welcome. And some of those words sometimes just enter my being so powerfully. I've heard them hundreds, thousands maybe of times, but it just strikes me in a different way, different days. And, that is part of the continuity. And I alluded to the fact that I studied my literature when I was in isolation. I'll use that word. I didn't have meetings at my fingertips. And it was so important to my continued recovery and my peace of mind. And of course, the steps and traditions just play out in my world subconsciously very often. And the recovery tools, gratitude, 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 gratitude. When I first came into the program, I used to be one of those people that always looked at the glass half empty. I didn't realize that at the time. But I am so grateful for so much in my life that whenever I'm feeling really in a bad place, gratitude brings me some peace of mind. Back to the reading. We come together in unity to help each other recognize that we are not alone in our recovery. Again, such a powerful statement that is what happens in every single meeting I attend. We help each other. And again, that goes back straight on to the language that comes out of tradition one. Our common welfare comes first. My brain just sunk, but you all know what the first tradition is. I have a book right here. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon Code of Unity. That's where I was getting caught up, because it's not just personal recovery, it's all of our recovery depends upon Code of Unity. And without realizing it, it's just been this wonderful, loving place to embrace recovery and growth and loving and healthy relationships. Each member is, this is back to the quote, each member is a unique part of a greater whole, which can be applied to so much in life, which again makes me refer to how important the traditions really are in living in the outside world. And subconsciously, so many of that type of philosophy, if I can call it that, shows up in other types of beliefs. And I feel so special and so privileged to be in this fellowship with the tools and the literature and the fellows and the promise of being able to live and not survive life anymore. And of course, sharing my experience, strength, and hope is a big part of it as well. But yes, every member has something to add, and every member is a unique part of the greater whole. And I can't tell you the emotions I felt when I attended a CODA conference years ago, and Ken and Mary were at it. And it was the first time I met them. And I was like almost shaking and in tears because of how much they transformed my low of my life, because this was early on in my recovery, my first 3-4 years, I guess. And if it wasn't for their insight into this, thankfully, not just my own problem, but lots of people's problems, and their wisdom and their suggestions and the literature that is out there, because really, for me, the meetings and the literature have been a godsend, a godsend. The last sentence from this passage in the reading, the Tradition 1 pamphlet, we value every individual's experience, strength, and hope. And I think I already touched on that earlier, just how much the newcomer can bring to my journey. And another thing I learned from a completely different source, but spiritual teachings, is to remember that the teacher could be the person in front of you. You just never know when you're going to be hearing something that will teach something so important. And this happens to me all of the time. And I love when my higher power allows me to recognize that, because certainly there are times I missed it and just it happened and that was it. But the concept of my higher power being around me and kind of like a little bumblebee, bzz, remember, don't forget, notice that. And that's kind of been a way of being aware. Awareness is something that when I'm in a bad place, I don't want to be aware of anything, especially what I'm feeling. And my higher power lets me be aware of the gifts that are all around me. So I did end up getting through the reading from that little pamphlet. So I'll just talk a little bit more about the rest of the traditions, if I may, because I just have to plug my other second favorite tradition, which is tradition 3. The only requirement for membership is a desire for healthy and loving relationships. Because even though I've been in this fellowship for years now, and I've worked the steps a number of times, worked the traditions a number of times, I've had my codependent slips a number of times, I've taken steps forward and many steps back a number of times. But I actually sometimes wonder, do I really have loving and healthy relationships? I need to work on that. I know I do, because I'm still working on that part with so many people in my life. Because although I do feel I have loving and healthy relationships, I think I'm sometimes putting up blocks, obstacles to keep them on that track. My relationship with myself, I could talk about that for way longer than 4 minutes, but I can just say that thanks to this program, I have a relationship with myself. I have a relationship with myself, and I've discovered what self-esteem is, and I have a comfort in my own skin, which was, I didn't even know what that was before this program. Boundaries, of course, is something else I didn't know about before this program. But during the pandemic, I'll just wind up with going back to what I'm experiencing in the pandemic world. I'm so grateful that I am comfortable in my own skin, because I've had to spend a lot of time on my own. And although I feel isolated and abandoned, not abandoned, isolated, because I chose to move where I'm living right now about a year and a half ago, so just before the pandemic really started. I didn't know anybody here, but I was cool with that, because I knew I'd meet people, and I knew that people would come visit me because I'm in a warm climate, and right now it's winter and most of where I used to live and where most of my friends and family are. And I love to travel, so I was going to be visiting friends, seeing places that I've wanted to visit. So I wasn't really going to be all on my own. But guess what? The pandemic changed everything for my so-called plans. But yeah, so I have this relationship with myself, and thank God, because I have been able to not just survive, I mean, really enjoy spending the time with myself. And the most important thing is my relationship with my higher power, which I keep working on. I've become much more regular with doing meditation every day, twice a day. And again, it's been part of this program. It's just part of this program. So with that, I will say thank you, everyone, for this opportunity, for your service. And I'll leave it there. Thank you all.